Okay, so you got a busy background, the 85 is perfect because it's really gonna smush it out of focus. We're talking like Nutella buttery focus. That's how I know you're gonna love the 85, because if you love Nutella, you're gonna love the 85. And if you don't love Nutella, you're not a human being. And if you don't love the 85, you're not a portrait photographer. Let's just keep going. The 85mm prime and lenses like it are a staple for your portrait photography toolkit. And in this video, I want to give you 4 reasons as to why, as well as a user guide on how to use it. My name is Pi, and I'm one of the founders of Lynn and Jersa Photography and SLRLounge.com. We're teaming up with Adorama to bring you a new series of photography tutorials called Master Your Craft right here on Adorama TV. So let's dive in. What's up, my friends? My name is Pi. I'm going to be honest, it is 2 a.m. I couldn't sleep last night, so I was like, I'm just going to go in and start filming. And what am I filming? Today we're talking about the 85mm prime, and this particular 85, as you can see, has been marked up because my buddy Carlo, who loaned this to me, is very paranoid about me stealing it, apparently. The first thing that I want to mention is that this user guide really applies to the 85mm prime lens, as well as lenses that act in a similar way. And what I mean by that is, when it comes to other primes that I kind of use in an exact same manner, we have the Sigma Art 105. This thing is redonkulous. This is the 1.8. This is the 105 1.4. Yeah, it's a little nutso. So I use it the exact same way. In fact, the 105 is kind of my replacement in my toolkit for my 85. So I generally don't take both. Another lens that kind of operates like it is like a 100mm macro. These are all lenses that you can use in the exact same manner and follow this same user guide. So let's go ahead and jump into reason number 1 why this is such a great portrait lens. The 85mm focal length is wonderful for anything full length all the way up to tight portraits. So it's great for close-ups. Now here's what I mean. I love shooting portraits with a 24, a 35, a 50, but whenever we start getting tight, we have to be aware that these wider angle lenses are going to cause distortion on the face. Even on a 50mm, if you're shooting close on the face, you're going to get distortion. So usually when it comes to, say, like a 50mm, I'm not really getting any closer than generally this type of a shot. You might punch it in the face, but the closer you get, the more you really have to be aware that we want to keep the subject in the center of the frame. We don't want to use the edges because you are going to start to distort. If that's desirable, by all means. Sometimes we use that for effect. And case in point, I often do use distortion to kind of create an exaggerated look. This is shot on a 24mm, well, on the 2470 at 24mm. And here we're using that kind of edge distortion to really add a lot of energy to our photograph here. So we're getting everybody in the frame, and you can see that anyone towards the edges of this shot is going to kind of be pulled and warped a little bit because of that lens distortion. Once we jump to an 85 though, we don't have any of those issues. So if I want to get tight for a portrait, this is kind of really more of a headshot of our bride, right? So I can get tight on this type of a shot, and this was actually captured on a 100mm macro. So again, using the 100mm almost the exact same way as an 85, and we're still going to have really beautiful fall off in the background of this lens. This is shot again on 100mm, and kind of the benefits of being on, like, say, 100mm macros, not only can you use it the exact same way, you also get that super tight punch in kind of, well, opportunity with the 100 macro that you wouldn't necessarily get on, say, an 85. That might limit your focal distance, right? So that's one of the benefits. The trade-off, obviously, for that particular lens is that it's not going to open out as wide, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But here is an 85mm shot of Shivani. Again, we can frame towards the center. We can frame, well, we can frame portrait. It doesn't really matter with that 85. We're not going to get any of that edge distortion, or at least enough of it to be noticeable. Number 2 is the exaggerated depth of field that the 85mm prime and primes like it have when shooting wide open. Okay, so it's super simple. You got a busy background, get it backlit. It could be by the sun. You can set up a flash, whatever it is. Get it backlit, shoot it wide open. It's a recipe for success every time. I mean, look at this image here. My friends asked for like a quick portrait, and we're literally standing on the sidewalk of their house. I'm like, oh, it's backlit. There's leaves that are backlit in the background. I'm going to grab an 85, shoot this at 1.2, 1.4, 1.8. It's gonna look good regardless. Okay, so you got a busy background. The 85 is perfect because it's really gonna smush it out of focus. we're talking like Nutella buttery focus. That's how I know you're going to love the 85, because if you love Nutella, you're going to love the 85. And if you don't love Nutella, you're not a human being. And if you don't love the 85, you're not a portrait photographer. Let's just keep going. So this is the 85 Zeiss Otis. Now, this is a manual focus lens. These are kind of considered the, top of the line when it comes to premium sharp lenses. Honestly, I've loved every 85 that I've worked with, the cheap ones, the expensive ones. Everything is good these days. So if it can open up wide, you're going to get the exact same look and effect. Here's the deal with manual focus lenses. They are a pain in the butt, okay? So the overall kind of usability for a lot of people is going to make lenses like this a nicety, but they're going to become very cumbersome in using. But still, it creates absolutely beautiful images. You get that tack sharp focal plane, and we're going to talk about, focusing when shooting wide open in a separate video. I think that's a worthwhile topic because I get a lot of questions on that. So look at this. The Volkswagen Bug, which is really just a couple feet behind them, is already starting to get smushed out of focus. And yeah, the leaves and everything like that, they're just destroyed. We have destroyed in a really pretty kind of way. This is that same lens, that same focal length that's going to give you these very buttery, soft flare effects, and I'm using that term a lot. But this is on the 85. I think this is just on a standard 85-1.4. Again, every variation of this lens I've used is just fantastic. And this is another great example of how the 85 makes everything good, okay? Because all I'm doing here is I'm shooting from a higher perspective down onto my bride, and what you see behind my bride is the sidewalk, a really crappy sidewalk. But what I know is that, well, even a sidewalk, when it's blurred and out of focus, especially when it kind of carries in the distance, it has like a very nice kind of patina almost texture to it when you render it at like 1.2 or 1.4 or 1.8 when you shoot it wide open with these apertures. So I'm placing the sidewalk, which is kind of this brighter area behind my subject, using a little bit of leaves to block part of it, add a little bit of interest, and we get this shot. Point number 3, we have compression. Okay, so when I talk about compression, we often confuse this with lens compression. Well, it's really perspective compression, and if you are super technical out there, please do not murder me. Either way, it's going to operate the exact same way, but what we're talking about here is perspective compression, and the 85 is wonderful for it. But what the heck does that mean? Well, perspective compression is essentially on an 85 or longer focal length, we're having to stand back, and essentially what we're doing is zooming in on the scene, and that overall effect, that distance between our subject and then zooming in, kind of gives the illusion that the background is being pulled closer to our subject. Again, this is perspective compression, right? And what we get is these columns that are in the background, they appear closer to our subjects than they actually are. And so for repeating backgrounds or for pulling backgrounds forward, it's a beautiful effect because it makes it look like there's just these rows. You can tell I get super excited about perspective compression, okay? But it makes it look like these rows of arches and lines like this shot are just dropping behind our subject. We don't get that look on a 24 or on a 35 or on a 50. We get it at, say, 70, 85, and really it becomes more and more exaggerated as we keep zooming in. But the 85 is such a beautiful sweet spot for it. Same with the 105, because along with those prime lenses, along with that focal length, you're getting that wide aperture. And when you use those two in conjunction, you get the buttery compression. We'll call it buttery compression. Another usage for this is leading lines, right? So here we're using the 105 for the same effect and kind of using this wall and the lines of that wall to lead right into our subject. Okay, so last but not least is number 4, which is background control. The 85mm, at this focal length, we have a lot of background control because we have multiple things working in conjunction. In fact, it's really all the things that we mentioned that kind of work in conjunction that give us that control. We have our wide aperture, we have that tighter focal length, and we have the ability to kind of get perspective compression and pull our backgrounds and do a little bit of manipulation there. And with that, we can get shots like this, where we're essentially shooting at a distance. We're framing our subject over the ocean, which is really quite far away. They're standing on a cliffside. We're standing pretty far away and shooting right across, making them very small and creating a lot of negative space in our shot. We can do that. We can use scenes like this. This is a fun one because this is shot on the 105, and we are in Los Angeles next to a parking lot, next to a street, yet it would look like we're standing in the middle of a field, right? But between the depth of field, between our compression, between just background framing control, we can make this look like we're in a completely different area. Same thing with this, again, shot on a sidewalk next to a moving truck in the middle of a parking lot in two busy streets. We can make it look like we're just in this perfect field type set and shooting these beautiful images when in reality it's really not. Same thing with this shot. We're shooting literally 10 feet from where this camera is positioned, right in our office next to our window. And if you were to shoot any wider on the scene, you would realize it's really not that special of anything, and the shot really lowers in quality the wider you go. But the 85, the 105, a 135, all of these lenses that kind of operate in that space give us so much control of the background, so much control over what the viewer sees, and they're really beautiful for that. With all that guidance, I do want to give you two quick cons, because while the 85 and lenses like it are beautiful for portraits, there's two things you kind of need to remember. These are not the focal lengths that I would typically use in tighter spaces. Like if you're walking into a room and you want something that's a bit versatile, but it's a tight space, the 85 is going to be difficult. You're going to be very much limited on your compositions in tighter spaces. So you need a little bit of distance to kind of work. The second con is that lenses like an 85 that can shoot wide open are generally going to be slower to focus. Now this is going to be kind of varying based on the version and the camera that you're using, but if you're comparing them to quick focus lenses like say a 2470 or a 7200, it doesn't really matter. You're going to be disappointed. When you're shooting high speed motion, journalism, moving objects, all that kind of stuff is going to be a bit cumbersome and honestly probably frustrating when you're trying to do it on an 85. That's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any questions, comments, what you want to see going forward, leave a comment below the video description. I do my best to kind of get to reading all of them and getting your guys' feedback. Also, I'd love for you to subscribe to the Adorama TV channel. You guys can find me at SLR Lounge. You can also follow me at PyJersa, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye.